Somewhere in the shadows of history, whispers linger, voices that refuse to be silenced, stories too chilling to forget. Imagine standing alone in an ancient forest, the wind carrying the echo of a long-lost scream, or walking through ruins where the air hums with something unseen. These aren't just ghost stories, they're fragments of our past, myths and legends woven into the fabric of cultures across the world, each one carrying a haunting legacy that has terrified generations. Today, we're stepping into the unknown, unraveling 30 of the most eerie tales ever told, stories that blur the line between history and nightmare. From cursed artifacts that bring doom to those who touch them, to ghostly armies marching in the mist, these legends have one thing in common: they've endured. They've been passed down through whispered warnings, carved into crumbling manuscripts, and hidden in the corners of forgotten ruins. Some are rooted in real events, distorted by time into something far more sinister. Others defy explanation entirely, leaving even the most skeptical minds questioning what lurks just beyond our understanding. This isn't just a collection of scary stories. It's a journey through humanity's deepest fears, the kind that linger in the dark long after the tale is told. We'll walk the same paths as those who vanished without a trace, uncover the truth behind infamous curses, and confront the creatures said to stalk the night. Some of these legends are whispered in hushed tones even today, their power undiminished by centuries. So if you're ready to face the unknown, to peer into the shadows where history and horror meet, then follow closely. Because once these stories take hold, they never really let go. Some gemstones shimmer with beauty, but others seem to pulse with something far darker. The Hope Diamond, a deep blue jewel the size of a walnut, is one of the most infamous cursed objects in history. Its story begins in India, where it was allegedly pried from the eye of a sacred statue of the goddess Sita, an act of sacrilege that legend says awakened a wrathful curse. The thief who stole it was torn apart by wild dogs, setting off a chain of tragedies that would follow the diamond for centuries. King Louis XIV of France acquired the stone, only to see his reign crumble in financial ruin and his beloved grandson die young. Later, Princess de Lamballe, who wore the diamond, met a gruesome fate during the French Revolution when a mob beat her to death and paraded her head on a pike. Even those who merely touched it weren't spared. Banker Henry Thomas Hope went bankrupt after obtaining it, while socialite Evelyn Walsh McLean wore it as a macabre good luck charm, only to lose her son to a car accident and her daughter to suicide. Today, the diamond rests safely behind glass at the Smithsonian, but not without eerie incidents. Staff have reported sudden equipment failures, mysterious illnesses, and an uncanny sense of being watched near its display. Some visitors claim to feel dizzy or nauseous when standing too close. Whether you believe in curses or not, the Hope Diamond's legacy is undeniable. A trail of misfortune so persistent that even now people hesitate to test its luck. The year was 1587, and the winds howled over Roanoke Island like a warning. 115 men, women, and children had settled there just 3 years earlier, sent by Sir Walter Raleigh to establish England's first foothold in the New World. But when Governor John White returned from a desperate supply trip to England, he found the village eerily empty, no bodies, no battle scars, just abandoned homes and a single word carved into a wooden post, Croatoan. Some say the settlers starved, others whisper of a darker fate. The word itself points to Croatoan Island, home to a native tribe known to be friendly. Did the colonists seek refuge there, assimilating into the community to survive? Fragments of European artifacts found among Croatoan descendants suggest this might be true. But then why leave behind no trail, no message beyond that one cryptic clue? Then there are the stories passed down by locals, tales of strange lights in the woods the night the colony vanished, of figures seen wandering the shore in tattered English garb long after. Some even claim the settlers angered the land itself, that ancient forces buried beneath Roanoke demanded a sacrifice. The truth may never be known, but the mystery endures. Even today, visitors report hearing whispers in the forest, as if the lost colonists are still trying to tell their story. In the quiet farmlands of early 19th century Tennessee, a malevolent presence took root in the Bell family home, an entity so relentless it would become America's most infamous poltergeist. It began with harmless noises, knocks on the walls, the sound of rats scurrying beneath the floorboards, but soon the disturbances turned vicious. Blankets were yanked from beds. Children's hair was pulled violently, invisible hands slapped and pinched until bruises bloomed. The spirit, which the Bells came to call the witch, had a voice, a guttural whisper that recited scripture one moment and spewed obscenities the next. It knew secrets no outsider could, recounting private conversations held miles away. Even General Andrew Jackson, future president and a man hardened by battle, couldn't escape its terror. After skeptically declaring he'd rather face the British Army than this witch, his wagon reportedly froze in place near the Bell property, wheels sinking into the earth as if gripped by unseen hands. Jackson's men fled, later recounting how the witch mimicked their voices, luring them into the woods with eerie calls. The entity reserved its cruelest torment for John Bell, the family patriarch. It poisoned his food, leaving him paralyzed for days. When he finally died in 1820, the witch cackled through the walls, claiming credit. His autopsy revealed a vial of strange black liquid in his throat, a detail no one could explain. After John's death, the spirit vanished as suddenly as it appeared, but its legacy endured. Witnesses swore it returned decades later, whispering prophecies of war and death that came true with chilling accuracy. To this day, visitors to Adams, Tennessee, report phantom growls in the caves near the Bell farm, or the sensation of being watched by something unseen. Whether demon, vengeful spirit, or something far older, the Bell witch remains a cornerstone of American folklore, a reminder that some hauntings refuse to fade into history. Deep in Russia's Ural Mountains, where the wind cuts like a knife and the snow never seems to stop, lies a slope forever marked by one of history's most chilling mysteries. In January 1959, 9 experienced hikers led by Igor Dyatlov set out on what should have been a routine expedition. But when they failed to check in, rescuers embarked on a search that would uncover a nightmare. Their tent was found ripped open from the inside, as if the group had fled in terror. Footprints led into the freezing darkness barefoot or wrapped in socks, despite temperatures plunging to -30 degrees. One by one, the bodies turned up, each more baffling than the last. 2 had fractured skulls. 1 was missing her tongue. Others showed signs of immense internal trauma, as if crushed by an invisible force. Most unsettling of all, some of their clothing contained traces of radiation. Official reports blamed an avalanche, but the details refused to fit. Why would skilled mountaineers slash their own tent open to escape, leaving behind warm clothing and supplies? Why were some bodies found hundreds of yards apart, some with strange orange tans, their skin oddly discolored? Soviet authorities shut the case quickly, sparking decades of speculation. Some point to secret military experiments, perhaps a parachute mine test gone wrong, or an explosion that sent the hikers running. Others whisper of infrasound, a phenomenon where wind patterns create frequencies that induce panic. And then there are the darker theories. Local Mansi tribesmen speak of ancient spirits guarding the mountains, while some investigators insist the injuries match the brute strength of a yeti. Even today, Dyatlov Pass remains a place of unease. Hikers report eerie noises, equipment failures, and a lingering sense of being watched. Whatever happened that night, one thing is clear: those mountains took the truth to the grave. The cobbled streets of Hamelin were supposed to be safe until the day the music began. In 1284, this quiet German town made a promise it couldn't keep. A stranger in a coat of many colors offered to rid them of their rat infestation with nothing but the eerie melody of his flute. When the mayor refused to pay, the piper returned on a summer morning playing a different tune. This time, 130 children followed him out of the gates, vanishing into the hillside as if the earth itself had swallowed them whole. The tale reads like a dark fairy tale, but its echoes in history suggest something far more unsettling. Some historians point to the Children's Crusade of 1212, a tragic movement where thousands of young souls marched toward the Mediterranean, believing the sea would part for them. Many were sold into slavery or perished, a loss so devastating it might have been retold as supernatural cautionary tale. Others argue the piper symbolizes the Black Death, which swept through Europe decades later, stealing lives as swiftly as the melody stole Hamelin's children. Then there are the whispers of mass emigration. Records from the era mention a group of young people leaving Hamelin to settle Eastern Europe, possibly lured by a recruiter's false promises. Could the piper have been a real figure, a colonial agent leading the desperate toward an uncertain fate? The town's own chronicles are chillingly specific. A stained glass window in their church, now lost, depicted the piper and his young followers, and ledgers from the time simply state, "It is 100 years since our children left." But the story's true power lies in its moral spine, a warning about the cost of broken vows. The piper wasn't a monster, he was wronged. The children weren't stolen, they were taken. Even now, Hamelin bans music on the street where the children vanished, and guides claim you can still hear faint piping near the so-called silent street. Whether folklore or fractured history, the legend endures because it asks a question we still fear. What happens when those in power betray the powerless? The piper's revenge wasn't just against a town, it was a strike at the very idea of injustice, and that's a melody that never fades. The streets of Strasbourg erupted in chaos during the summer of 1518, not with flames or riots, but with something far more unnatural. It began with a single woman, Frau Trophia, who stepped into the square and began dancing. Not the joyful steps of celebration, but a jerking, frenzied motion, her body moving as if pulled by unseen strings. Within days, dozens joined her, then hundreds, their limbs thrashing uncontrollably under the scorching July sun. They danced until their feet bled, until bones cracked, until hearts gave out. By month's end, at least 40 lay dead, their bodies broken by exhaustion. Authorities, desperate for answers, declared the plague divine punishment and ordered more dancing, hiring musicians and constructing stages in a cruel attempt to dance the fever out. Some modern scholars blame ergot poisoning, a fungus found in spoiled rye bread that can trigger hallucinations and muscle spasms, symptoms eerily similar to the dancer's torments. Others point to mass psychogenic illness, a phenomenon where stress and collective fear manifest physically, spreading like a contagion. The Dark Ages had just ended, after all, and Strasbourg was reeling from famine, disease, and the existential dread of an unpredictable world. Could this have been a subconscious rebellion, bodies acting out the terror their minds couldn't articulate? Then there are the darker whispers. Medieval chronicles describe similar outbreaks across Europe, often near sites of old pagan worship. Some theorists suggest these were remnants of forbidden rituals suppressed by the church but never fully erased, a collective memory surfacing in twisted form. Whether chemical, psychological, or something more arcane, the dancing plague remains a harrowing reminder of how easily the human mind and body can unravel. Today, the cobblestones of Strasbourg hold no visible scars, but the question lingers: what force, natural or otherwise, could make people dance themselves to death? The first sighting struck like a thunderclap in the quiet town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. On a frigid November night in 1966, two young couples driving past an abandoned munitions plant swore they saw it, a towering figure with wings spanning 10 feet, its eyes glowing like embers in the dark. When they accelerated in terror, the creature kept pace with their car, soaring effortlessly beside them at nearly 100 miles per hour before vanishing into the trees. Within days, more reports flooded in. A fireman described its piercing, inhuman shriek. A farmer found strange, three-toed tracks in the snow. Locals dubbed it the Mothman, and soon the town became a magnet for paranormal investigators and terrified witnesses alike. But the sightings were only the beginning. Over the next 13 months, Point Pleasant descended into a whirlwind of unexplained phenomena, mysterious men in black harassing witnesses, phones ringing with static-filled calls from no known number, and an overwhelming sense of dread that clung to the town like fog. Then, on December 15, 1967, disaster struck. The Silver Bridge, a vital link over the Ohio River, collapsed during rush hour, sending 46 cars plunging into the icy water below. 46 lives were lost. To many, the connection was undeniable. The Mothman had been a harbinger, a spectral warning of tragedies to come. Skeptics point to misidentified sandhill cranes or great horned owls, their large wingspans and reflective eyes easily mistaken in the dark. Others suggest mass hysteria fueled by Cold War anxieties, with the munitions plant's shadowy history feeding collective fear. Yet the details defy easy explanation. Multiple witnesses described the creature's unnatural movements, how it seemed to vanish midair, or how its eyes gleamed red even in broad daylight. One woman claimed it appeared at her window nights before the bridge fell, staring silently as if carrying a message no one could decipher. The legend didn't die with the Silver Bridge. Mothman sightings continue globally, often clustered before catastrophes, from Chernobyl to 9/11. Pop culture immortalized it in books and films, but the heart of the mystery remains in Point Pleasant. Today, a gleaming silver statue of the creature stands downtown, its wings outstretched, eyes forever watching. Visitors still report eerie encounters near the old munition site, where the air grows thick with the sense of something just beyond sight. Whether guardian, omen, or something far older, the Mothman's legacy endures, a whispered reminder that some warnings come too late and some shadows never fully fade. High in the Carpathian Mountains, where castles cling to cliffs like something from a nightmare, one name still chills the blood: Countess Elizabeth Bathory. Born in 1560 to a powerful Hungarian family, she was royalty in every sense, educated, wealthy, and devastatingly beautiful. But beneath the silk and jewels festered something monstrous. By the time authorities stormed her castle in 1610, rumors had spiraled into legend that she'd tortured and killed over 600 young women, bathing in their blood to preserve her youth. The truth is murkier than folklore suggests. Trial records detail horrific abuses within sieged castle servant girls found starved, burned with hot coins, or left to freeze in the snow. Witnesses spoke of iron maidens and razor-studded cages, of Bathory biting chunks of flesh from her victims in frenzied rages. But the blood baths, historians largely dismiss them as later embellishments, likely concocted to justify her swift imprisonment without trial. The real horror lies in the documented atrocities. Power, not vanity, seems the driving force. With her husband away at war, Bathory ruled her lands with impunity, targeting peasant girls who couldn't fight back. What's undeniable is the scale. Over 3 decades, entire villages reported missing daughters. Local priests finally tipped off the king, but even then, justice was twisted. Bathory's noble status spared her execution. Instead, she was bricked into a small room in her own castle, where she died 4 years later. The stories, though, refused to be contained. Vampire myths sprouted around her, inspiring Bram Stoker's Dracula centuries later. Today, visitors to sieged claim to hear faint screams in empty corridors or catch the scent of rust like old blood seeping from the walls. Whether tyrant or folktale, Bathory's legacy endures as a stark reminder. Monsters wear crowns too. 2.5 millennia ago, a philosopher sat down to write a cautionary tale and accidentally birthed one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, Plato described Atlantis not as myth, but as historical fact, a sprawling island kingdom beyond the Pillars of Hercules, its rings of canals gleaming with gold and orichalcum, its armies conquering lands as far as Egypt. Then, in a single day and night of earthquakes and floods, the entire civilization sank beneath the waves in utter disgrace. The story was meant as an allegory about hubris, but the world refused to let it rest. Modern searches for Atlantis often circle the volcanic ruins of Santorini. Around 1600 B.C., this Mediterranean island was home to the sophisticated Minoans when a cataclysmic eruption obliterated their cities. The explosion sent tsunamis crashing into Crete, possibly inspiring tales of divine punishment. Archaeologists have found Minoan frescoes depicting advanced plumbing and multi-story buildings, echoes of Plato's description. But the timeline doesn't quite match. The philosopher claimed Atlantis fell 9,000 years before his era, while Santorini's disaster was a mere 1,000 years prior. Others look to the Azores, where underwater structures near the mid-Atlantic ridge resemble man-made ruins. Satellite imagery reveals geometric shapes beneath the waves, fueling speculation. Could these be the remnants of Atlantis's famed circular citadel? Skeptics argue they're natural formations, but the allure persists. Even Nazi occultists became obsessed, sending expeditions to prove Atlantis was the homeland of the Aryan race. Perhaps the most fascinating twist is how the legend evolves with each generation. Victorian explorers tied it to Mayan ruins. New Agers claim it housed crystal-powered technology. Some theorists even suggest Plato was recording an ancient memory of the Black Sea flood, a real event around 5600 B.C. that submerged thousands of square miles. The truth may never surface, but that's the power of Atlantis. It's not just a lost city, it's a mirror. For philosophers, it reflects moral decay. For scientists, it's a puzzle of geology and archaeology. For dreamers, it's proof that greatness and catastrophe could lie just beneath the waves. Every supposed discovery, from Bimini Road to Antarctica, says less about history and more about us. Our longing for forgotten glory, our fear of collapse, and our stubborn belief that somewhere under the ocean's dark embrace, the past is waiting to be found. Los Angeles in January 1947 should have been a place of post-war optimism, but instead it became the stage for one of the most haunting unsolved crimes in history. 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, dubbed the Black Dahlia for her jet-black hair and penchant for dark clothing, was found in a vacant lot, her body severed cleanly at the waist, drained of blood and posed with grotesque precision. Her face, frozen in a Glasgow smile, stretched ear to ear in a chilling mockery of joy. The brutality was surgical, suggesting a killer with medical expertise or, as some whispered, something far more ritualistic. The media frenzy that followed was unprecedented. Newspapers splashed grisly photographs across front pages, igniting public hysteria. Detectives chased over 60 suspects, from jealous lovers to opportunistic drifters, but the case grew colder with each dead end. Then there was Dr. George Hodel, a brilliant but sinister physician with ties to the surrealist art scene. His own son, a retired detective, would later accuse him based on secret recordings where Hodel allegedly bragged about the murder in riddles. "Supposin' I did kill the Black Dahlia," he whispered on one tape. They couldn't prove it now, but the darkest theories linger in the margins. Short's body showed signs of prolonged captivity, torture marks, ligature scars hinting at days of torment before death. Some investigators noted the corpse's resemblance to an inverted pentagram when mapped to the crime scene, fueling speculation of occult sacrifice. Letters sent to the press, supposedly from the killer, contained cryptic references to biblical wrath and alchemical symbols. One even included Short's personal belongings, mailed after her death. Decades later, the Dahlia's ghost refuses to rest. Tourists still leave roses at the murder site, and amateur sleuths pore over declassified files, searching for clues the original investigators missed. Yet the truth remains as elusive as the shadowy figure who vanished into the neon-lit streets of old Los Angeles, leaving behind only whispers and a legacy of dread. This wasn't just a murder, it was a performance, a spectacle designed to shock and linger, and in that, the killer succeeded beyond measure. For centuries, one book has defied every expert, linguist, and cryptographer who dared to crack its secrets. The Voynich manuscript, a weathered tome dating back to the 1500s, is filled with pages of looping, alien script and illustrations that seem plucked from a fever dream. Plants with no known earthly counterparts, nude women bathing in emerald green tubes, constellations rearranged into strange new patterns. Discovered in 1912 by antique book dealer Wilfred Voynich, it's become the holy grail of unsolved codes, a puzzle so resilient that even World War II codebreakers, fresh from cracking Nazi ciphers, threw up their hands in defeat. The text itself is a labyrinth. Statistical analysis reveals patterns consistent with real language. Words repeat in ways that mirror Latin or medieval Arabic, yet no known alphabet matches its curling characters. Some letters resemble Latin shorthand, others look like nothing seen before. The illustrations deepen the enigma. Herbal pages depict flora with twisted roots and bulbous leaves, species no botanist can identify. Astronomical sections show spiraling galaxies and zodiac signs spliced together unnaturally. Then there are the biological diagrams, women with swollen abdomens floating in interconnected vessels, their bodies linked by veins or vines, an image that's fueled theories ranging from alchemical experiments to extraterrestrial influence. Historians have dueled over its origins. Carbon dating places the vellum between 1404 and 1438, likely crafted in northern Italy. But was it a hoax? Renaissance con artists were known to manufacture ancient texts to sell to wealthy collectors. Yet the manuscript's complexity argues against this. Creating a fake language this consistent would require staggering effort for little payoff. Others propose its glossolalia, the written ramblings of a mystic channeling divine nonsense. The most tantalizing theory that it's a lost language, perhaps a constructed script for a secretive sect, or even a visual cipher where each odd plant represents a philosophical concept. Modern AI has joined the fray. In 2019, a Canadian team claimed their algorithm partially decoded it as Hebrew written in anagram code, suggesting a treatise on women's health. Skeptics point out their translations are vague, fitting only select passages. Meanwhile, the Banach Library at Yale, where the manuscript now resides, fields endless requests from amateur sleuths convinced they've found the key. None have succeeded. Perhaps the truth lies in how we perceive mystery. The Voynich manuscript is less a book and more a mirror, reflecting our obsession with the unsolvable. Every generation projects its fears and hopes onto its pages, from Renaissance magicians seeing alchemy to today's UFO enthusiasts spotting star maps. Its power isn't in answers, but in the questions it keeps alive. How much knowledge has been lost to time, and what if some secrets are meant to stay buried? The manuscript's silence is its loudest message. Some doors, no matter how hard we pound, refuse to open. Deep in the sprawling pine barrens of New Jersey, where the trees grow dense and the mist clings low to the ground, something unnatural has stalked the wilderness for over 200 years. Descriptions vary, but the basics remain the same: a creature with leathery wings stretched wide as a man is tall, cloven hooves that leave prints too deep for any known animal, and a scream like no living thing should make. This is the Jersey Devil, a nightmare given form, and its origins are as twisted as its appearance. The legend begins in 1735 with a woman named Mother Leeds. Local lore claims she was a witch, or at least a woman scorned by her community, who cursed her 13th child while giving birth. As the story goes, the moment the baby took its first breath, it transformed. Limbs elongated, skin stretched over emerging wings, and its cries shifted from human wails to something unholy. Before the midwife could react, the thing smashed through the window and vanished into the pines. Some say Mother Leeds summoned the devil himself to claim her child as punishment for her sins. Others insist it was a political smear, a fabricated tale to discredit the Leeds family, who are prominent in the area and at odds with local religious leaders. But the sightings didn't stop with folklore. In January 1909, newspapers erupted with reports of the devil terrorizing towns across South Jersey. Teachers locked children inside schools as claw marks appeared on rooftops. A trolley driver swore it swooped at his car, its eyes glowing in the dark. Even a respected businessman claimed to have fired a shotgun blast at it, only for the creature to keep moving as if unharmed. The hysteria grew so intense that police offered rewards for its capture, and the Philadelphia Zoo reportedly sent armed trackers to hunt it down, all to no avail. Skeptics have tried to explain it away as misidentified sandhill cranes, their wingspans massive enough to startle in low light. Some suggest the Leeds Devil, as it was originally called, was nothing more than a particularly clever piece of 18th century propaganda, a way to turn public opinion against the Leeds family by painting them as cursed. But then how to explain the consistency in sightings? Over centuries, across generations, witnesses describe the same impossible anatomy, the same guttural shrieks cutting through the night. Even today, hikers in the Pine Barrens report strange tracks or the sudden silence of wildlife, as if something far older and far darker is watching. Perhaps the most chilling detail is how deeply the legend has rooted itself in New Jersey's identity. Hockey teams bear its name. Road signs warn drivers to stay alert. Tourists flock to the Barrens hoping for a glimpse, while locals insist they'd rather not find out what's really out there. The Jersey Devil isn't just a monster story. It's a living piece of folklore, a reminder that some mysteries refuse to die. Whether born of curse, slander, or something far stranger, one thing is certain. In the shadow of those ancient pines, the devil still walks. The desert town of Taos, New Mexico, is known for its adobe architecture and vibrant art scene. But beneath the tranquil surface lies a mystery that has tormented residents for decades. It's called the Taos hum, a low, persistent drone that seems to vibrate through the bones of those who hear it. Described as the sound of a distant diesel engine idling or a cell phone vibrating endlessly inside a wall, the hum isn't audible to everyone. But for those who can perceive it, the effect is maddening. Some report sleepless nights, migraines, even a sense of impending dread that lingers as long as the sound itself. The phenomenon first gained widespread attention in the early 1990s when a group of residents banded together, desperate for answers. Scientists descended on the town, armed with sensitive audio equipment, only to find something baffling. The hum didn't appear on recordings. It wasn't seismic activity, power lines, or underground pipes, at least nothing conventional. Yet multiple studies confirmed that roughly 2% of Taos's population could hear it clearly, their descriptions eerily consistent. Theories span from the plausible to the extraordinary. Some point to infrasound, frequencies below the threshold of human hearing that can still cause physical discomfort, possibly generated by wind patterns or distant industrial activity. Others suspect secret military experiments. The nearby Los Alamos laboratories have long been a hub for classified research, and rumors swirl about underground installations testing advanced energy weapons. Then there are the more esoteric explanations, ancient Earth energies, ley lines intersecting beneath the town, or even extraterrestrial communication signals misinterpreted by the human brain. But what makes the Taos hum uniquely unsettling is how it plays tricks on perception. Unlike other unexplained sounds, it's not a shared experience. Families report one member hearing it while another, standing right beside them, hears nothing at all. This selective audibility has led psychologists to explore the possibility of mass delusion, or a rare neurological condition affecting how certain brains process ambient noise. Yet that doesn't account for the clustering of cases in specific geographic areas, or the fact that similar hums have been reported worldwide from Bristol, England to Bondi, Australia. Theories may clash, but the impact is undeniable. Over the years, some residents have moved away, unable to endure the constant intrusion. Others have learned to live with it, even harnessing the hum as creative inspiration. Local artists have woven it into music, paintings, and poetry, transforming a source of frustration into something strangely beautiful. Whether scientific anomaly or something beyond current understanding, the Tao's hum lingers as a reminder that some mysteries don't announce themselves with a shout, but with a whisper just below the surface, one that refuses to be ignored. The legend begins in the shadows of Golgotha, where the air was thick with dust and the scent of iron. As Jesus stumbled under the weight of the cross, a man sometimes called Ahasuerus, sometimes Cartaphilus, leaned against his doorway and scoffed. "Move faster, false prophet," some versions say he sneered. Others claim he struck Christ or refused him mercy when he paused to rest. For this act of cruelty, the story goes, the man was cursed to walk the earth without rest or death until the second coming, a living witness to the truth he denied. What starts as a Christian morality tale soon twists into something far darker. By the Middle Ages, the wandering Jew had become a fixture in European folklore, appearing in town squares with ragged robes and hollow eyes, warning sinners of divine wrath. But his description bent posture, a long beard, often clad in clothing associated with Jewish communities, fed into rising anti-Semitic fears. Medieval Europe, reeling from plague and famine, needed scapegoats, and the legend provided one, an eternal outsider forced to roam as punishment for rejecting Christ. Sightings spanned centuries with eerie consistency. In 1322, an Armenian bishop claimed to meet the cursed wanderer in his travels, a man who spoke every language and recounted witnessing the crucifixion firsthand. In 1564, a shoemaker in Hamburg swore the Jew had passed through his shop, leaving footprints that smoldered on the wooden floor. Even into the 19th century, reports persisted: railway workers in England, miners in the American West, all describing a gaunt figure who vanished as quickly as he appeared. But the legend's most insidious legacy is how it intertwined with real-world persecution. During the Black Death, Jewish communities were accused of poisoning wells, a myth that led to massacres. The wandering Jew became a symbol of this supposed treachery, his eternal punishment proof of collective guilt. By the 1800s, the figure had been co-opted by nationalist movements, his image twisted into propaganda warning of the rootless Jew corrupting Christian society. The Nazis later weaponized this trope, using it to justify genocide under the guise of ancient prophecy. Yet there's another layer to the tale. Some scholars argue the legend also reflects universal anxieties: fear of the stranger, dread of divine judgment, the terror of outliving everyone you love. In this light, the wandering Jew becomes more than a villain. He's a tragic figure, forced to watch history unfold without ever being part of it. Today, the legend lingers in odd corners of culture, from Goethe's poetry to Neil Gaiman's Sandman, where the Jew is a weary philosopher still walking. But the real horror isn't in the curse itself. It's in how a story meant to teach compassion was warped into a tool of hate, a reminder that myths aren't just tales. They're mirrors reflecting the best and worst of those who tell them. One morning in February 1855, the people of Devon, England, woke to a sight that defied explanation. Overnight, a thick blanket of snow had covered the countryside, but this wasn't what shocked them. Stretching for miles from the quiet village of Topsham to the rolling hills of Exmouth were thousands of hoofprints pressed deep into the snow. Not the delicate steps of deer or the rounded marks of a stray farm animal. These were perfect cloven shapes scorched into the snow as if by fire, each one spaced exactly 8 inches apart in an unnaturally straight line. And they didn't just wind along roads or fields, they scaled sheer walls, hopped across rooftops, even appearing on opposite sides of locked garden gates, as if whatever made them could walk through solid barriers. The panic was immediate. Locals dubbed them the Devil's Footprints, convinced that Satan himself had stalked their homes in the night. church attendance spiked. Farmers kept their livestock locked tight. Newspapers as far as London picked up the story, fueling speculation about supernatural visitations, but not everyone was quick to blame the infernal. Naturalists proposed more earthly explanations. Perhaps a wayward kangaroo escaped from a traveling menagerie, its bounding gait leaving odd imprints in the snow. Others pointed to badgers or otters, their paws sometimes leaving paired marks that could resemble hooves under melting conditions. Then came the scientists. In the years since, researchers have floated theories ranging from experimental balloons dragging chains to freak atmospheric phenomena creating localized burns. One particularly compelling hypothesis involves jumping rodents like field mice when snow partially melts and refreezes. Their tiny tracks can merge into larger, more sinister-looking shapes. But none of these fully account for the sheer scale of the phenomenon. The prints spanned over 100 miles, crossing rivers and impossible barriers without breaking stride. Even today, zoologists struggle to name an animal that could leave such a trail without pausing to eat, rest, or veer off course. The devil's footprints resurfaced sporadically over the years in Scotland in 1952, in Argentina in 2008, each time reigniting debates. Were they hoaxes, mass hysteria, or something older, something woven into the fabric of folklore worldwide? Similar tales exist in Native American legends and Eastern European myths, always describing a lone, unholy traveler marking its path. Perhaps the most unsettling detail isn't the prints themselves, but what they represent, the deep, primal fear of the unseen. A reminder that even in our rational world, some traces in the snow lead not into the woods but straight into the dark corners of human imagination. Oak Island, a small patch of land off the coast of Nova Scotia, holds one of history's most infamous treasure hunts and one of its deadliest. The story begins in 1795, when a teenager named Daniel Maginnis stumbled upon a peculiar circular depression in the ground, surrounded by old oak trees with unnatural notches carved into their trunks. Beneath the depression, he and his friends dug down, uncovering layers of flagstones, wooden platforms, and even fibrous coconut husk materials that had no business being buried 30 feet below the surface of a remote Canadian island. Word spread like wildfire. This was no natural formation. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide something deep underground, and they'd built deadly safeguards to protect it. Over the next 2 centuries, the so-called money pit would become a vortex of obsession, drawing explorers to their ruin. Every few feet, excavators hit another obstacle, layers of charcoal, putty, or even mercury substances known to deter looters. At 90 feet, they struck a stone slab etched with cryptic symbols, later translated to read, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds lie buried. But when they dug further, seawater suddenly flooded the shaft, filling it faster than anyone could pump it out. The trap was diabolical in its ingenuity. Someone had engineered a series of hidden tunnels connected to the ocean, designed to drown anyone who breached the pit's deepest secrets. Theories about what lies at the bottom are as varied as they are tantalizing. Some swear it's Captain Kidd's lost pirate hoard, smuggled from the Caribbean and buried for safekeeping. Others point to the Knights Templar, who allegedly fled Europe with sacred relics, perhaps even the Holy Grail, and constructed the pit as a last stronghold. Then there's the wilder speculation: Marie Antoinette's missing jewels, Shakespeare's original manuscripts, or even proof of pre-Columbian transatlantic voyages. The island's history only deepens the mystery. In the 1800s, workers uncovered a triangle-shaped stone formation at nearby Smith's Cove, suggesting an elaborate system of drains and flood channels. Spanish coins and fragments of parchment have surfaced over the years, but no definitive treasure. The real cost of this enigma isn't just financial, it's human. At least 6 men have died pursuing the money pit's secrets, from drowning to tunnel collapses. In 1965, 4 workers were killed when a shaft caved in, their bodies never recovered. Modern efforts haven't fared much better. High-tech expeditions using sonar and drilling have located strange metallic objects deep underground, but each retrieval attempt is met with new disasters. Boreholes collapse, equipment fails, the island seems determined to keep its secrets. Perhaps the most chilling twist, the pit never empties. No matter how much water is pumped out, it always refills, as if fed by some endless underground source. Divers who have braved the flooded tunnels describe eerie, man-made chambers lined with wooden beams, but visibility is near zero and currents threaten to trap them. Whatever lies down there, the island guards it fiercely. Today, Oak Island remains a battleground between skepticism and obsession. Skeptics argue the pit is a natural sinkhole, its booby traps just layers of sediment and seawater infiltration. But then how to explain the coconut fibers, a material native to the tropics, not Nova Scotia, or the meticulously placed logs dated to the 1400s? The truth may never be hauled to the surface, but that hasn't stopped the dreamers. As long as that pit gapes open, whispering of forgotten gold and drowned men, someone will always be willing to risk everything for the chance to uncover history's most stubborn secret. What if nearly 300 years of history never actually happened? The phantom time hypothesis is one of the most audacious theories ever proposed, a claim that an entire chunk of the early Middle Ages was fabricated. According to German historian Herbert Illig, the years between 614 and 911 were invented by conspirators, meaning events like Charlemagne's reign or the rise of the Abbasid Caliphate might be elaborate fictions. The implications are staggering. If true, our calendars are off by centuries and countless historical figures never existed. But how could such a massive deception even be possible? Illig's argument hinges on inconsistencies in the Gregorian calendar reform of 1582. When Pope Gregory XIII adjusted the calendar to correct drift from the solar year, he deleted 10 days to realign dates with astronomical events. But Illig calculated that the discrepancy should have been even larger, 13 days, if history had progressed uninterrupted since the First Council of Nicaea in 325. To him, this gap suggests missing centuries, not just days. He also points to sparse archaeological evidence from the disputed period and the sudden reappearance of Roman-style architecture in the 10th century, as if builders skipped ahead stylistically without evolving gradually. Yet historians have dismantled these claims systematically. Dendrochronology tree ring dating provides unbroken records stretching back thousands of years, showing no gaps where Illig's phantom centuries would be. Byzantine and Chinese records from the missing period describe astronomical events like supernovas and eclipses that align perfectly with modern calculations. The construction techniques of Charlemagne's palaces weren't Roman revivals but innovations adapted from earlier Merovingian designs. Even the calendar math falls apart under scrutiny. Illig's calculations ignore the fact that medieval Europe used the inaccurate Julian calendar, which compounded errors over time. The theory's endurance says more about human psychology than historical fact. We're drawn to grand conspiracies because they simplify chaotic timelines into deliberate plots, offering the illusion of order. But the real mystery isn't whether 300 years vanished, it's why we're so eager to believe they did. Every generation has its historical revisionists, but the phantom time hypothesis stands out for its sheer scale. It forces us to ask, how much of the past can we truly verify? In an age of digital archives and carbon dating, the answer is more than Illig thought, but less than we'd like to admit. Imagine stumbling upon a writhing mass in the shadows of a medieval granary, not just a cluster of rats, but a grotesque tangle of bodies fused together by their own tails, knotted so tightly they could never pull apart. This is the Rat King, one of history's most unsettling natural oddities turned omen of doom. The phenomenon occurs when the long, flexible tails of rats become stuck together with blood, dirt, and filth, forming a tight knot that binds the animals for life. Some specimens show as few as 3 rats locked in this nightmare embrace, while others, like the famous display at the Mauritianum Museum in Germany, feature over 30 individuals, a squirming, screeching mass that early observers believed could only be the work of dark forces. European folklore spun terrifying tales around these creatures. Farmers in the Middle Ages saw them as harbingers of famine or plague, a living curse sent to punish sinful villagers. When the Black Death swept across continents, rat kings took on even darker significance. Witnesses claimed the creatures moved as one, their shared body dragging across floors with unnatural coordination. Some legends described them as malevolent rulers of rodent armies, directing swarms to overrun homes and fields. Even the name Rat King carries eerie weight, less a title of honor and more a warning of twisted hierarchy, like something out of a grim fairy tale. But science offers a grimmer, if less supernatural, explanation. Rats nesting in cramped, damp spaces often twist their tails together unintentionally, especially in cold weather when they huddle for warmth. Over time, movement tightens the knot, and secretions like urine or nesting materials glue them permanently. The result is a slow, agonizing existence. Unable to hunt properly, the rats survive only as long as their collective strength holds out. Modern biologists note that while rare, the phenomenon isn't impossible, particularly among species with long tails like black rats. What medieval villagers saw as a cursed omen was likely just a tragic quirk of nature amplified by fear. Yet the Rat King's legacy lingers in the overlap of myth and reality. Preserved specimens in European museums draw equal parts fascination and revulsion, their twisted forms frozen behind glass. Artists and writers have seized on their symbolism, from E.T.A. Hoffman's dark fairy tales to modern horror films where they represent collective suffering or societal collapse. Perhaps their enduring power lies in what they force us to confront, the line between the natural world and our darkest superstitions. After all, even stripped of legend, the sight of creatures bound eternally by their own bodies is a horror no imagination needs to embellish. High in the Himalayan monasteries, where the thin air hums with centuries of prayer, there exists a belief that the human mind can shape reality itself, not through metaphor, but in startlingly literal fashion. This is the concept of the tulpa, a thought form so intensely visualized that it takes on physical presence. Tibetan Buddhist texts describe monks spending years in silent meditation, focusing their will until the imagined becomes tangible. The most famous Western account comes from explorer Alexandra David Neal, who claimed in the 1920s that she conjured a jovial, rotund monk during her travels, only for the creature to grow increasingly independent, even sinister, until she was forced to dissolve it through weeks of counter-meditation. What begins as spiritual discipline soon crosses into unsettling territory. Tulpas aren't mere hallucinations. Witnesses report interactions with them, from hearing their footsteps to feeling their touch. David Neal wrote of her creation developing its own preferences, refusing to wear the robes she'd envisioned and adopting a mocking grin instead. This rebellion hints at the darker edge of the phenomenon. Once unleashed, a tulpa might not remain under its creator's control. Tibetan lore warns that poorly formed thought forms can become malevolent, feeding on the energy of their makers like metaphysical parasites. Some accounts describe tulpas outliving their creators, wandering the physical world as ghostly hitchhikers long after the original mind has perished. Modern psychology offers a framework for understanding, though not necessarily dismissing these accounts. The ideomotor effect explains how subconscious expectations can trigger involuntary physical actions, like a Ouija board's planchette seeming to move on its own. Could a tulpa be the ultimate extension of this, the brain manifesting a secondary consciousness so vivid it tricks even the senses of others? Online communities have taken the concept further, with self-described tulpamancers sharing techniques to craft imaginary companions. Some report success, detailing entities that hold conversations or offer comfort during lonely nights. Others tell cautionary tales of thought forms turning hostile, echoing David Neal's warnings. Yet the most intriguing thread isn't whether tulpas are real in the conventional sense. It's what they reveal about the untapped potential of human cognition. Cultures worldwide harbor legends of doppelgangers, fetch beings, and living shadows, all variations on the idea that the mind can externalize its contents. Science is just beginning to explore concepts like neural plasticity and collective consciousness, areas where ancient practices and cutting-edge research might intersect. Perhaps tulpas exist in the liminal space between perception and reality, a reminder that the boundaries of the self are far more porous than we assume. After all, if a solitary monk in a mountain cave can will a companion into being, what else might the human mind be capable of? The answer, like the thought forms themselves, lingers just beyond our grasp. The icy shores of Angakuni Lake in Canada's far north hold a silence that speaks volumes, a silence born from one of the most chilling disappearances in history. It was November 1930 when fur trapper Joe Labelle made his way to the small Inuit village he'd visited many times before. Smoke should have curled from the tents, children's laughter should have carried across the frozen ground. Instead, he found a ghost town. Pots of stew still hung over smoldering fires, half-sewn sealskin parkas lay abandoned beside needles and rifles. The most precious tools for survival in the wilderness leaned untouched against tents. Most horrifying of all were the sled dogs, buried under a snowdrift where they'd starved to death, still tethered to posts. An entire community of roughly 30 men, women, and children had vanished without a trace, leaving behind everything they owned as if plucked from existence mid-moment. Labelle's report to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police sparked a search, but no bodies were ever found. No footprints led away from the village, no signs of struggle marked the snow. Even the graves in the nearby burial ground had been emptied, their contents mysteriously unearthed. The RCMP official explanation pointed to starvation or a sudden migration, but neither theory holds up under scrutiny. Why leave food cooking? Why abandon weapons in a place where survival depended on them? The Inuit who knew the area whispered of the Tornet, ancient giants from their legends said to steal people in the night. Others spoke of the Kalupalik, a creature beneath the ice that drags the unwary into the depths. Then there are the modern theories. Some point to the infamous Dyatlov Pass similarities, another frozen mystery where skilled outdoorsmen fled their tents in terror. Could infrasound or sudden seismic activity have triggered mass panic? UFO enthusiasts cite a report from that same November when a prospector named Arnaud Laurent claimed to see a strange blue light zigzagging over Angakuni Lake. Skeptics dismiss this as the Northern Lights or a hoax, but the timing is uncanny. Even more unsettling are the later reports of a nearby trading post where radio operators allegedly intercepted frantic Morse code that night, repeating one phrase over and over, "We see them." They're coming. The transmission cut off mid-sentence, and no trace of its origin was ever found. Perhaps the most haunting detail is how the land itself seems to reject answers. Over the decades, search parties have reported compasses spinning wildly near the lake, camera equipment failing without explanation, and an oppressive stillness that makes even seasoned outdoorsmen uneasy. The Inuit elders still warn travelers away after dark, speaking of voices on the wind that aren't human. Whether tragedy, otherworldly intervention, or something beyond our understanding, Angakuni Lake keeps its secrets frozen in time, a reminder that in the vast, silent wilderness, some vanishings refuse to be solved. In the quiet fields of 12th century Suffolk, England, the harvest season took a turn for the bizarre when villagers stumbled upon two children near the wolf pits of Woolpit, a brother and sister with skin the color of moss and clothing made from an unrecognizable fabric. But it wasn't just their emerald complexions that shocked the locals. The siblings spoke in a guttural, rhythmic language no one could decipher, recoiled from all food offered to them, and wept inconsolably under the open sky. According to the chronicles of William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall, these were the Green Children of Woolpit, and their origins remain one of history's most puzzling enigmas. At first, the villagers assumed the children were sick or cursed. The boy, frail and despondent, succumbed within months, but the girl survived, slowly losing her green hue as she adapted to a diet of beans and bread. Once she learned enough English to communicate, she shared a story that bewildered even the most learned scholars. She and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, a twilight realm where the sun never rose and the light was perpetual dusk. They'd been herding their father's cattle when they heard a sound like bells, then suddenly found themselves in the Woolpit fields, blinded by the glare of our sun. Theories about their true nature have spiraled for centuries. Some historians argue they were Flemish immigrants, displaced by persecution under King Henry II. Flemish weavers, known for their distinct dialect and greenish dyes, might fit the description, especially if malnourishment gave their skin an eerie pallor. The Twilight Land could describe the dense forests of Flanders, where sunlight barely penetrated the canopy, but why claim to come from an underground world? Trauma, perhaps a child's way of processing violent dislocation. Then there are the more fantastical interpretations. Could the children have been accidental travelers from a parallel dimension, stumbling through some natural wormhole? The description of St. Martin's Land, a place of eternal dimness, bears an uncanny resemblance to modern theories about folded spacetime or even subterranean ecosystems. UFO enthusiasts go further, suggesting the siblings were extraterrestrials, their green skin a result of copper-based blood or exposure to an alien atmosphere. The bells they heard might have been the hum of a spacecraft, and their aversion to Earth food a sign of incompatible biology, but folklore offers its own lens. English mythology teems with stories of fairy children, changeling beings from underground kingdoms who wander into our world, often with tragic results. The green hue could symbolize their otherworldly origins, a marker of the liminal space between human and fae. The girl's eventual assimilation into village life mirrors countless tales where magical beings are slowly drained of their power by the mundane world. Science, too, has weighed in. A condition called chlorosis, caused by severe iron deficiency, can tint the skin a greenish shade, plausible given the siblings' initial refusal to eat. Yet this doesn't explain their language or their account of a sunless homeland. Could they have been survivors of a mining disaster, emerging from the darkness of collapsed tunnels with their memories fractured? The mystery endures because it refuses all tidy explanations. Every theory fits some details but unravels others. The Green Children weren't just a medieval oddity. They were a mirror reflecting the fears and fascinations of their time and ours. Whether refugees, interlopers from another world, or figments of collective imagination, their story lingers like the faintest trace of green in an otherwise ordinary landscape, a reminder that some mysteries are meant to stay unresolved. No one in the small Welsh town of Haverfordwest knew what to make of June and Jennifer Gibbons. Born in 1963 to Barbadian immigrants, the twins were inseparable from the start, but not in the way most siblings are. By age 3, they'd developed a secret language, one so impenetrable that even their own parents couldn't understand them. To outsiders, their speech sounded like rapid-fire humming, a private cadence only they shared. School teachers wrote them off as mute, classmates mocked them, but behind closed doors, the twins held entire conversations, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed almost hypnotic. This wasn't just shyness or selective mutism. It was as if they'd built a wall around themselves, brick by brick, and no one else was allowed inside. As teenagers, their isolation took a darker turn. After a series of petty crimes, arson, vandalism, theft, they were sent to Broadmoor Hospital, England's infamous psychiatric institution. Diagnosed with shared psychosis, a rare condition where delusions spread between closely bonded individuals, they spent 14 years locked away. Yet even in confinement, their bond deepened into something almost supernatural. They wrote novels in tandem, dark, surreal stories about power and control, filling notebooks with identical handwriting. They played elaborate games of pretend, taking on roles like the writer and the editor, as if their minds were two halves of the same machine. Most chilling of all, they began predicting the future. Jennifer, the quieter of the two, declared that one of them would have to die for the other to live a normal life. "I'm going to die," she told June matter-of-factly. Yes, then, in 1993, on the day they were finally transferred to a less restrictive facility, Jennifer collapsed suddenly and died. The autopsy revealed acute myocarditis, a heart inflammation with no clear cause. There were no signs of foul play, no traces of poison. Just as she'd foretold, Jennifer was gone, and June, for the first time in her life, began speaking to others. "I'm free," she told a reporter years later, her voice steady but her eyes distant. "Jennifer gave her life for me." Psychiatrists have struggled to explain the twins' connection. Was it extreme codependency, a shared delusion so powerful it blurred the lines between identity, or something deeper, a psychic bond science can't yet quantify? Twin studies suggest that some siblings share inexplicable synchronicities, from finishing each other's sentences to feeling physical pain when the other is harmed. But June and Jennifer took this to an unsettling extreme. Their story forces us to ask how much of human connection lies beyond our understanding, and what happens when two minds become so intertwined they can't survive apart. The Gibbons twins left behind more than a medical mystery. They became folklore in their own right, a modern myth about the price of intimacy. Visitors to their hometown still whisper about the silent sisters, wondering if their bond was a curse or a gift. June, now living a quiet life in Wales, rarely speaks of Jennifer, but in the rare interviews she's given, one phrase lingers: "We were one." Whether a metaphor or a revelation, those three words hold the weight of an entire unspoken world. Christmas Eve, 1945, should have been a quiet night in Fayetteville, West Virginia, just a modest coal mining town tucked into the Appalachian Hills. But for the Sodder family, the holiday turned into a nightmare that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Around 1 in the morning, a fire erupted in their home, blazing so fiercely that by the time neighbors arrived with buckets, the house had already collapsed into a smoldering heap. George and Jenny Sodder frantically searched for their 5 youngest children, Morris, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, but they were nowhere to be found. The parents insisted the kids had been asleep upstairs, yet when investigators sifted through the ashes, not a single trace of human remains was discovered. No bones, no teeth, no fragments of clothing, just silence and a mystery that refuses to die. At first glance, the fire seemed tragically routine, faulty wiring, perhaps, or an overturned Christmas decoration. But the details didn't add up. Witnesses claimed the flames burned unnaturally fast, as if fueled by something more than wood and fabric. The Sodders' telephone line had been cut earlier that evening, and their truck, parked nearby, wouldn't start when George tried to drive for help. Stranger still, the family's coal bucket had been moved from its usual spot beneath the stairs, blocking the children's only escape route. And then there were the sightings. Multiple locals reported seeing the missing children in a passing car that night, their frightened faces pressed against the windows. One woman even swore she'd spoken to them days later at a roadside diner, where they whispered they'd been taken for revenge. The official explanation was grim but simple. The fire had cremated the bodies entirely, leaving nothing behind. But cremation requires sustained temperatures over 2,000 degrees, far hotter than a house fire typically reaches. Even if the blaze had been that intense, why were there no dental fragments? Children's teeth, with their dense enamel, almost always survive fires. The Sodders hired a private investigator who uncovered something chilling. The county's fire chief had once drunkenly threatened George, vowing to burn down his house and destroy his entire family after an argument over unionizing coal miners. Was this arson, a targeted kidnapping, or something even darker? The family never stopped searching. For decades, they plastered towns with missing person flyers, followed tips from psychics, and even excavated their own property in hopes of finding clues. Then, in 1968, a cryptic photo arrived in the mail, a young man who bore a striking resemblance to Morris Sodder, with a handwritten note on the back, Louis Sodder. I love Brother Frankie, Eel Boys, a 90,132 or 35. The image was traced to a studio in Texas, but the trail went cold. Jenny Sodder died still clutching that photo, convinced her children had been stolen. Conspiracy theories swirl like smoke around this case. Some point to organized crime. Georgia's outspoken criticism of Mussolini had drawn threats from local fascist sympathizers. Others whisper about human trafficking, noting that Appalachia was a hotspot for child abductions in that era. Then there's the oddest detail of all. A neighbor claimed to see strange men lurking near the Sodder house that night, loading bundles into a vehicle before speeding away. Today, the lot where the house once stood remains eerily empty. No one rebuilt there. No one even walks across it. The case is technically still open, a gaping wound in Fayetteville's history. Were the Sodder children victims of a cover-up, or did they somehow survive, living under new identities? The truth might lie buried in some long-forgotten file. Or perhaps it's out there still, carried by someone who knows exactly what happened that frozen Christmas Eve. One thing's certain, fires don't erase people completely, and when the ashes refuse to speak, the whispers only grow louder. In the quiet Bavarian countryside, just outside the sleepy village of Kaifek, the Gruber family farm stood like an island in the snow, isolated, peaceful, and seemingly untouchable. That was until the night of March 31st, 1922, when something monstrous walked through the door and left behind one of Germany's most baffling unsolved crimes. The Hinterkaifeck murders weren't just brutal, they were methodical, intimate, and laced with details so chilling they've haunted investigators for over a century. It began with small, unnerving signs. Days before the massacre, farmer Andreas Gruber told neighbors he'd found footprints in the snow leading from the woods to his farmhouse, but none leading away. The family's keys went missing. A newspaper they didn't recognize appeared on their kitchen table. Then came the noises, muffled footsteps in the attic, the sound of someone moving where no one should be. Andreas dismissed it as the wind or perhaps his imagination. He was wrong. When the family's maid, Maria Baumgartner, arrived for work on April 4th, she found the farm eerily silent. No smoke from the chimney, no animals fed. Venturing inside, she made a grisly discovery: the bodies of Andreas, his wife Kazilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, and Victoria's two children, 7-year-old Kazilia and 2-year-old Joseph. All had been bludgeoned with a mattock, a farming tool that was later found cleaned and neatly hung back in the barn. Victoria's baby, Joseph, was still tucked in his crib, his skull crushed. The killer had then stayed in the house for days, feeding the livestock, eating the family's food, and even covering the bodies with hay before fleeing into the night. The forensic evidence only deepened the horror. Investigators found strands of hair clutched in the elder Kazilia's hand, hair that didn't match any of the victims. Bloodstains suggested some had been dragged alive to the barn before execution. Most disturbing of all, the killer had slept in the attic, directly above where the family lay dead, their blood still fresh on the floors below. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered that Victoria's long-dead husband, killed in World War I, had returned in a fit of spectral rage. Others pointed to a local peddler seen lurking near the farm, or even Victoria's alleged secret lover, a theory fueled by the fact she'd given birth to Joseph years after her husband's death. Then there was the missing maid before Maria I, who'd quit just days before the murders, claiming the farm was haunted. Had she sensed something the Grubers ignored? The case was officially closed in 1955, with authorities blaming an unnamed madman long since dead. but amateur sleuths still comb through the details, uncovering unsettling threads. The farm was demolished in 1923, the land consecrated as if to bury the evil that lingered there. Yet visitors today claim to hear phantom whispers near the site or feel an oppressive weight in the air, as if whatever walked through the snow that winter never truly left. What makes Hinterkaifeck endure isn't just the brutality, but the intimacy of the horror. This wasn't a random act of violence, it was personal. The killer knew the farm's routines, its hiding places, its rhythms. They moved through the house like a shadow, leaving no trace but those impossible footprints, a ghost in the snow, stepping toward the door but never away. In the middle of bustling city streets, embedded like artifacts in the asphalt, lie cryptic messages that have baffled commuters, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike. Known as the Toynbee tiles, these mysterious plaques first appeared in the 1980s, popping up in cities across the United States and even as far as South America. Each one bears the same eerie hand-carved inscription, Toynbee Idea, in movie 2001, Resurrect Dead on Planet Jupiter. The words are cryptic, the meaning obscure, and the artist behind them, despite decades of investigation, remains a ghost. The story begins in Philadelphia, where the earliest known tiles were discovered. Made from layers of linoleum and tar paper, they were pressed into the pavement during summer heat, fusing with the road over time. The text references two seemingly unrelated figures, Arnold Toynbee, a British historian who theorized about societal collapse and rebirth, and Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, a film that imagined humanity's evolution among the stars. But what connects them? Some believe the tiles advocate resurrecting the dead on Jupiter, a cosmic twist on Toynbee's theories of cyclical history. Others think it's an elaborate hoax or even an artistic manifesto hidden in plain sight. The mystery deepens with the tiles spread. Over the years, they've appeared in New York, Baltimore, Kansas City, and even as far as Chile. Some feature additional text like "murder everywhere" or references to media manipulation, hinting at a darker, more paranoid worldview. Then there are the night tiles, which depict a cartoonish knight's helmet and sword, their meaning just as enigmatic. The sheer scope suggests a coordinated effort, yet no one has ever claimed responsibility. More intriguing still are the theories about the artist. In the early 2000s, investigative journalists traced the tiles to a reclusive Philadelphia man named James Morasco, a former TV repairman who allegedly believed in resurrecting humanity on Jupiter using a blend of science and mysticism. But Morasco denied involvement, and when he passed away in 2003, the trail went cold, only for new tiles to appear years later, proving the mystery was far from over. Some speculate the original creator left behind disciples, or that multiple copycats seized on the idea, weaving their own cryptic messages into the streets. The phenomenon raises more questions than answers. Why embed these messages in roads where they'd inevitably be worn away by traffic? Was it a prophetic warning, a prank, or an underground art project? Perhaps the most unsettling detail is how the tiles mirror themes from 2001, a film about humanity encountering forces beyond comprehension. Like Kubrick's Monolith, the Toynbee tiles are silent, stark, and just out of reach, daring us to decipher their meaning before they vanish beneath the wheels of time. Today, the tiles are vanishing. Weather and roadwork have erased many, turning them into urban legends. Yet for those who stumble upon them, the effect is electric, a jolt of mystery in the mundane grind of city life. Whether an elaborate cipher, a cosmic plea, or the work of a lone eccentric, the Toynbee tiles endure as a testament to the human hunger for meaning. After all, what's more haunting than a message that outlasts its messenger, whispering from the pavement long after the voice behind it is gone? The autumn air was crisp along the Isdalen Valley near Bergen, Norway, when two hikers stumbled upon a scene straight out of a spy thriller. It was November 29, 1970, and there, nestled between the rocks, lay the charred remains of a woman, but this was no ordinary tragedy. The victim had been doused in accelerant, her body burned beyond recognition, yet her fingerprints were meticulously sanded off. In her possession, a stash of fake passports, wigs, and coded notes scribbled in a cryptic shorthand. This was the Isdal woman, and her story would unravel into one of Europe's most chilling Cold War mysteries. Authorities quickly realized they weren't dealing with a simple homicide. The woman had stayed in multiple hotels under different aliases, always requesting rooms away from other guests. She'd abruptly change her appearance, switching wigs and outfits mid-journey. Surveillance footage from a Bergen train station captured her in a trench coat and sunglasses, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting pursuit. Even her luggage tags had been carefully removed, the only clue a single label from a Brussels department store. The forensic evidence was just as baffling. Traces of barbiturates and carbon monoxide were found in her system, yet the burns suggested she'd been alive when the fire started. Was this a suicide staged to look like murder, or a professional hit designed to erase her identity? Then came the notes. Scraps of paper hidden in her belongings contained strings of numbers and letters. LH24011Q, 8A3C21D. Cryptographers pored over them, theorizing they could be coordinates, radio frequencies, or even a book cipher referencing a specific edition of the Odyssey. The most haunting discovery, a matchbook from Bergen's Hotel Norge where she'd stayed weeks earlier. Inside, someone had scrawled the word Finn, Norwegian for find. A plea for help or a command for an unseen accomplice. Speculation spiraled. Some investigators believed she was a Mossad operative tracking Nazi fugitives in Scandinavia. Others pointed to East German intelligence, noting that 1970 was the height of Soviet-backed espionage in neutral Norway. The most tantalizing lead came from a pharmacist who recalled selling her eczema cream months earlier. She'd spoken with a distinct Slavic accent. But when Interpol circulated sketches across Europe, no one came forward. The truth might lie in the shadows of Operation Gladiator, a rumored NATO counterintelligence operation targeting Soviet moles. Norway's military archives remain sealed, but declassified documents hint at a wave of suspicious deaths among informants that year. Was the Isdal woman collateral in a hidden war? Even her dental work told a story, fillings consistent with Eastern European techniques, yet her shoes were Italian, her watch Swiss, a woman without a country, without a name. Today, her case remains open, a ghost in Norway's national archives. Hikers still report a lingering scent of smoke near Isdalen, though no fire burns. In 2016, forensic artists reconstructed her face, hoping someone might recognize her. No one did. Perhaps that's the point. In the world of espionage, the best operatives leave no traces, just riddles wrapped in ashes, waiting for a cipher that may never come. The morning of August 20th, 1966, dawned quiet over the Morro do Vintém hillside in Brazil until a young boy chasing his kite stumbled upon a sight that would unravel into one of the strangest deaths in history. There, side by side in matching black suits and slicked-back hair, lay the bodies of two men. Their faces were eerily concealed beneath homemade lead masks, the crude eye coverings molded like something out of a low-budget sci-fi film. Beside them rested a small notebook with a single, cryptic phrase, 4:30 p.m. Be at agreed location, 6:30 p.m. Ingest capsules, after effect protect metals until signal mask. The victims were quickly identified as electronics technician Miguel José Viana and factory worker Manuel Pereira da Cruz, ordinary men with no known criminal ties. Yet every detail of their death screamed the opposite. Their clothing was immaculate, pressed as if for a formal event, but their shoes were scuffed from an apparent climb up the rugged slope. Water bottles and damp towels lay nearby, along with 2 empty wallets and a receipt for the lead sheets used to craft the masks, most baffling of all. Autopsies revealed no signs of violence, poison, or even natural causes. It was as if they'd simply lain down and surrendered to death on that lonely hillside. Rumors of occult rituals spread like wildfire. The lead masks, some theorized, were meant to shield their eyes during some forbidden cosmic event, perhaps an attempt to commune with extraterrestrials. UFO sightings had surged in Brazil that summer, and witness reports described strange lights over Niterói the night before the bodies were found. Others whispered of government experiments gone wrong, pointing to the men's ties to a local electrical company with rumored military contracts. The notebook's reference to protect metals only fueled speculation. Were they handling radioactive materials? But the most compelling clue might lie in their shared obsession. Cruz and Viana were active members of an obscure spiritualist group obsessed with contacting higher dimensions. Friends recalled their fascination with levitation and psychic shields, concepts that, in the swinging 60s, blurred the lines between science and mysticism. The lead masks in this light weren't just props, they were tools crafted in earnest belief that the metal could focus mental energy or block harmful vibrations. Even the note's stiff phrasing reads like garbled instructions from a half-understood occult text. Decades later, the case remains as opaque as those blank lead eye coverings. Police files were lost in a flood, key witnesses vanished, the only tangible legacy, a single, persistent rumor that in the weeks before their deaths, the men told co-workers they were on the verge of a breakthrough, or one that would change everything. Whether that breakthrough was scientific, spiritual, or something far stranger, we'll never know. But in the quiet of Morro du Vintame, where the wind still rustles through the grass where they fell, one thing's certain: those masks weren't meant to keep the world out. They were meant to keep something in. It was just another night of television in Chicago until the screens went haywire. On November 22, 1987, viewers of WGN and WTTW were jolted from their regularly scheduled programming by something unprecedented. The signal had been hijacked. In place of the evening news, a bizarre figure flickered into view. A man wearing a grotesque rubber mask mimicking the digital smirk of Max Headroom, the era's futuristic TV icon. But this wasn't corporate advertising or avant-garde art. This was an act of electronic trespassing so brazen it bordered on surreal. For nearly 2 minutes, the intruder dominated the airwaves, his distorted voice cackling through garbled audio. He rambled in nonsensical phrases: "Your love is fading, catch the wave," while slapping his own behind with a fly swatter and gyrating to an eerie synth soundtrack. At one point, an accomplice off camera could be heard whispering, "They're coming to get me," before the feed abruptly cut to static. The intrusion was over as suddenly as it began, leaving behind only confusion and a chilling question. How had someone bypassed the station's security to hijack a broadcast signal in the heart of a major city? The technical feat alone was staggering. In an era before wireless routers and satellite hacking, hijacking a TV signal required intimate knowledge of broadcast infrastructure and access to high-powered transmission equipment, the kind typically locked behind layers of corporate and FCC safeguards. The intruder had exploited a vulnerability in the station's auxiliary transmitters, overpowering the legitimate signal with their own pirated broadcast. This wasn't just mischief, it was a masterclass in analog hacking executed with precision. Authorities scrambled for answers. The FBI launched an investigation, chasing leads that ranged from rogue engineers to underground hacker collectives. Some theorized the intrusion was a stunt by a disgruntled employee, given the specific knowledge required. Others pointed to the burgeoning, freaker subculture phone hackers who had begun experimenting with media piracy. Yet despite fingerprints left in the audio, hidden tones later linked to early computer modems, the culprit vanished into the digital ether. No arrests were ever made. What elevates the Max Headroom incident beyond mere prank lore is its cultural resonance. The mask itself was a twisted mirror of the decade's tech obsession. Max Headroom, the fictional AI host, represented the glossy promise of the digital age. The intruder's grotesque parody of that icon felt like a subversion of the era's blind faith in technology. Even the timing was eerily prophetic. Within years, concerns over cybersecurity would explode into mainstream consciousness. Decades later, the hijacking remains a white whale for internet sleuths. Reddit threads dissect every glitch in the footage. Engineers reverse engineer the audio for hidden clues. Some claim to have identified suspects: a now deceased radio technician, an obscure punk band, but concrete evidence remains elusive, perhaps the most unsettling detail. The hijacker's final, glitched-out whisper, "The cops are after me." Were they caught and never revealed, or did they slip away, their stunt a fleeting middle finger to the media machine? The mystery endures because it speaks to something primal in our relationship with technology. Before deepfakes and ransomware, this was a visceral reminder that the airwaves, and by extension reality itself, could be hacked. In today's world of deepfake politicians and AI-generated disinformation, the Max Headroom intrusion feels less like a relic and more like a warning from the past, crackling through the static of history. The mask may have been rubber, but the message was real. Control is an illusion, and the signals we trust can be stolen. The night of August 15, 1977, had all the makings of a quiet shift for astronomer Jerry Amon. As he pored over the latest data from Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope, a sprawling array of antennas trained on the cosmos, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Then, halfway through his printout, a sequence of numbers and letters leaped off the page: 6 equage 5. It lasted only 72 seconds, a fleeting blip in the endless cosmic static, but it sent Amon scrambling for his red pen. Circling the anomaly, he scrawled a single, electrifying word in the margin. Wow, the signal was unlike anything ever recorded. Coming from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, it pulsed at exactly 1420 MHz, a frequency known as the hydrogen line, the natural emission band of the universe's most abundant element. Scientists had long theorized that an advanced civilization might use this frequency as a cosmic calling card, since it cuts through interstellar noise like a beacon. The signal's intensity spiked and faded in a way that ruled out natural sources like comets or pulsars, and its narrow band width screamed artificial precision. For 72 heart-stopping seconds, it seemed humanity wasn't alone in the universe. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. Decades of follow-up scans turned up nothing, not a whisper, not an echo. The WOW signal became a cosmic one-hit wonder, immortalized by its mystery. Some dismissed it as a rogue satellite or a glitch in the telescope's aging hardware, but Big Ear's design made that unlikely. Its twin receivers acted as a reality check. Any terrestrial interference would have registered on both, but the WOW signal appeared in just one beam, proving it came from deep space. Others suggested a military transmission, yet no known earthly technology matched its unique profile. Theories spiral from there. Could it have been a message intentionally directed at us, a brief hello from a civilization that didn't stick around for the reply? Or was it the dying ember of some catastrophic event, a starship's engine exploding perhaps, or a planet's final distress call? The most haunting possibility, that it was indeed a deliberate signal, but we simply missed the rest of the conversation. Big Ear's scanners couldn't swivel to track the source in real time, leaving astronomers staring at a single frame of a transmission that might have carried on for hours, even years, beyond our ability to hear it. Today, the original printout hangs in a frame, a relic of the closest we've ever come to proof we're not alone. Projects like SETI still scan Sagittarius, hoping for a repeat performance, but the universe keeps its silence. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the middle, not quite a hello, not quite static, but something in between, a cosmic accident we mistook for a handshake. Or maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what it seemed. After all, in the grand theater of the universe, some performances are meant to be fleeting, a single, dazzling note in the dark, leaving us forever wondering who or what was on the other end. Whatever the wow signal was, its legacy endures where science and wonder collide. It's a reminder that in the vast quiet of space, even a whisper can echo across generations, daring us to keep listening. And if history's any guide, the universe rarely stays silent forever. The Atlantic Ocean stretched endlessly under the December sun in 1872, its surface calm as glass, until the crew of the British ship Gracia spotted a vessel listing oddly in the distance. Approaching cautiously, they hailed the brigantine, but no answer came. Boarding the silent ship, they made a discovery that would echo through history. The Mary Celeste was deserted. Not a soul remained on board, yet everything else was eerily intact. A half-eaten meal sat on the galley table, still fresh. The crew's personal belongings, pipes, sewing kits, even gold watches lay undisturbed in their quarters. In the captain's cabin, the logbook's last entry was unremarkable, noting clear skies and smooth sailing just days earlier. Only one clue hinted at chaos, a single, hastily slashed rope dangling from the stern, the ship's lone lifeboat missing. Speculation erupted immediately. Had pirates stormed the vessel, the lack of violence, no bloodstains, no signs of struggle, made that unlikely. Mutiny seemed implausible too. Captain Benjamin Briggs was a respected officer, his crew experienced and loyal. The ship's cargo, over 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol, was untouched, ruling out theft. The weather logs showed no storms, and the Mary Celeste herself was seaworthy, her hull sound and sails still rigged. So why abandon a perfectly good ship in the middle of the ocean? Some pointed to the alcohol barrels. 9 were empty, their contents potentially leaking fumes that could have triggered fears of an imminent explosion. Perhaps the crew evacuated in panic, only to watch helplessly as the Mary Celeste drifted away, leaving them to the mercy of the waves. Others whispered of waterspouts, rare, tornado-like columns of water that might have terrified the crew into fleeing. Then there were the wilder theories: sea monsters, alien abductions, even Bermuda Triangle-style dimensional rifts, but the most compelling clue might lie in the ship's pumps. Investigators found them disassembled, as if the crew had been frantically trying to clear water from the hold. Yet no major leaks were found. Could a malfunctioning gauge have falsely indicated catastrophic flooding, prompting a needless evacuation? It wouldn't be the first time maritime instruments led to tragedy. The Mary Celeste's mystery only deepened with time. Subsequent owners reported the ship was cursed, its cabins haunted by phantom footsteps. Even Arthur Conan Doyle, years before creating Sherlock Holmes, penned a fictionalized account blaming a vengeful ex-slave, a story that blurred the line between fact and folklore. Today, the ship's name is synonymous with inexplicable abandonments, a ghost story wrapped in salt-stained wood and unanswered questions. What truly happened that December morning? The ocean keeps its secrets well, but the Mary Celeste endures as a cautionary tale, not of monsters or magic, but of how fear, coupled with the vast, indifferent sea, can turn rational men into legends. And sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't about what's taken, but what's left behind. From cursed diamonds to phantom ships, lost colonies to dancing plagues, one thread connects every story we've explored: the human hunger for the unexplained. These aren't just campfire tales, they're mirrors reflecting our deepest fears and fascinations. Why do we fixate on mysteries that defy resolution? Perhaps because they live in that tantalizing space between fact and folklore, where history blurs into legend and the ordinary brushes against the impossible. Take the Mary Celeste. A perfectly preserved ship with no crew isn't just a nautical puzzle. It taps into our primal fear of abandonment, the terror of vanishing without explanation. The wow signal, more than a cosmic blip, it embodies our loneliness in the universe, the desperate hope that something out there is listening. Even localized legends like the Jersey Devil or the Bell, which reveal how communities process trauma through storytelling, transforming real events into cautionary myths that outlive their origins. But here's what's fascinating. In our digital age, these mysteries don't fade, they evolve. The same impulse that had medieval villagers whispering about rat kings now fuels online forums dissecting the Dyatlov Pass or the Somerton Man. We've traded parchment for pixels, yet the questions remain. Are we alone? What lurks in the shadows? How much of history is truth, and how much is collective imagination? That's where you come in. These stories thrive on retelling, on the personal connections we forge with them. Maybe you've stood in a place that hummed with unexplained energy, or your family has passed down a bone-chilling tale that defies logic. Share them, because every first-hand account, every regional ghost story, adds another stitch to the vast tapestry of human mystery, and this conversation isn't over. From Slender Man to the backrooms, modern folklore is being written right now in the corners of the internet. But that's a journey for another night, one where we'll explore how urban legends adapt to the age of algorithms and viral hoaxes. Until then, keep looking over your shoulder. After all, the best mysteries aren't just solved, they're lived. So tell me, which legend lingers in your mind long after the story ends? The answer might just become someone else's new obsession.